Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Thank you. Thank you, Andre, for those kind words. I appreciate that. Appreciate you. It's one of the best friends I've had during my life in Birmingham, Alabama. Has been Andre Sparks, and I'm so thankful for him and for this opportunity to come and share with you. It's a wonderful church that we love and has been there for us, a place that we consider our home when we're not serving somewhere. So we thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you for the music. It was wonderful. It reminded me of the illustration my wife would give me. She served with me for a while as the music and worship leader at Rocky Ridge, and she would tell me, listen, I'm going to get you to the goal line. When I get done, it's going to be 1st and 10, 1st and goal on the 1 yard line. I'm going to hand you the ball. You just need to push it in. And that's what y'all did. I'm ready. Ready to score that touchdown. Spike the ball, but she does a good job, and y'all did a wonderful, wonderful job. I missed that Hammond. I missed that, brother. Oh, Lord. If you can't preach with a Hammond organ behind you, you just need to sit on down and go home. Sit on down and go home. And we thankful for the opportunity to come and share with you. Andre came and did a wonderful job with us a couple of weeks ago. I brought Miss Karen with him, and we just had a wonderful time. And I will tell you, your pastor clowned. I mean, he went off. He got up in there among all these white folks, and he pulled it. He pulled it. Yes, he did. And I'm glad he did. I was so thankful. Farah and Karen and I were sitting on the front row, and it was quiet except for us. And that's the way it always is. But I could hear her, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be right there with Karen, because Karen was like, I was like, all right. Got to back his sister up. I was like, all right, come on, Andre. But did they do that for me? No. But different strokes, different folks. But they loved him, and as I knew they would, and he did a wonderful job. And we're so thankful for y'all coming, and thankful for my wonderful family being here with me today and encouraging me and supporting me. I do want to tell you all up front, my wife works at the Birmingham Public Library. Many of you know that, and she has to work today at 1 o'clock. So if I leave quickly afterwards, it's not because I don't want to spend time and visit with y'all. It's just that we don't have a choice. If we could, we would stay all day and let you love on us like you do your pastor. We would love that, but we have to do what we have to do. Amen. Amen. But I'm so thankful for this opportunity to come and share with you all today. And I want to share a passage that is not real common. And I don't know if how many of y'all have studied it before or have been through it. It's one of my favorites because it doesn't really make any sense what Jonathan does. I don't know if y'all ever heard about the time that Jonathan and his armor bearer took on 20 Philistines and beat them. But he did. And in my opinion, Jonathan woke up that morning. I think Jonathan woke up every morning like that. Like, all right, what's the challenge today? Let's handle it. That was his attitude. Jonathan had that kind of attitude. I think that's why he and David hit it off so well, why they were such good friends, that their spirits were knit together. Because they had this attitude of, if God tells you to do it, then just do it. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen. If God said to do it, then do it. So some people would consider this a story of great faith. Some people, great foolishness. I remember that story my dad used to always tell me when I would pull something really, really foolish. And I remind myself of it sometimes because I still do foolish things. And he would say, son, the Lord looks after fools and little children. And you're getting a little bit too old. So I don't know if we can say that that's what Jonathan is here, but we're going to look at it. Just look at this passage. It's a little bit lengthy one, but bear with me. 1 Samuel chapter 14. We're going to read verses 1 down through verse 15. and see what we can learn from that passage today. Beginning in verse 1, it reads, "One day Jonathan, son of Saul, said to the young man bearing his armor, 'Come, let's go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side.' But he did not tell his father. Saul was staying on the outskirts of Gibeah under a pomegranate tree in Migron. With him were about 600 men, among whom were Ahijah, who was wearing an ephod. He was the son of Ichabod's brother Ahitub, son of Phinehas, the son of Eli, the Lord's priest in Shiloh. And no one was aware that Jonathan had left. On each side of the pass that Jonathan intended to cross to reach the Philistine outpost was a cliff. One was called Bozez and the other Seneh. One cliff stood to the north toward Michmash and the other to the south toward Geba. And Jonathan said to his young armor-bearer, 'Come, let's go over to the outpost of those uncircumcised fellows. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few.' 'Do all that you have in mind,' his armor-bearer said. 'Go ahead, I am with you, heart and soul.' Jonathan said, 'Come then, we will cross over toward the men and let them see us. If they say to us, wait there until we come to you, we will stay where we are and not go up to them. But if they say, come up to us, we will climb up, because that will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands.' So both of them showed themselves to the Philistine outpost. 'Look,' said the Philistines, 'the Hebrews are crawling out of the holes they were hiding in.' The men of the outpost shouted to Jonathan and his armor-bearer, 'Come up to us, and we'll teach you a lesson.' So Jonathan said to his armor-bearer, 'Climb up after me. The Lord has given them into the hand of Israel.' Jonathan climbed up, using his hands and feet, with his armor-bearer right behind him. The Philistines fell before Jonathan, and his armor-bearer followed and killed behind him. In the first attack, Jonathan and his armor-bearer killed some 20 men in an area of about half an acre. Then panic struck the whole army, those in the camp and field, and those in the outposts and raiding parties, and the ground shook. It was a panic sent by God." So we have Jonathan sneaking off by himself with his armor-bearer, doing something that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And it's important that you get a little bit of the background, if we could have the PowerPoint, a little bit of the background. If you look in chapter 13, you can see a little bit about what was going on in Israel at this time. We know that Saul had been chosen to be the king, and he was trying to do the best he knew how to do. He'd never been the king before. But in that time, the Philistines had been oppressing the children of Israel for quite some time. And one of the ways that they kept them down was to not allow them to have any weapons. They did not allow even any blacksmiths to work at all in Israel. They took all the blacksmiths with them so that you couldn't even go and have a weapon forged for yourself. So the children of Israel had no weapons. And because of that, you can imagine they were not a very well-trained army. So this is the background that what we have. And God calls Saul, and he raises him up, and he puts his spirit on him, and he tells him, you're going to deliver these people from the hands of the Philistines. And he doesn't have a large army, and the army that he does have is having a hard time getting any weapons. And the Philistines like it that way because it works well for them. So Saul is sitting under a tree, I assume trying to figure out what to do next. If you read the Message Bible, I like the Message Bible too. The Message Bible says that he was kind of taking it easy. That was the sense that he was just laid back under a palm tree or under a shade tree with his men thinking, what should we do next? And Jonathan gets up, as he did, and I believe every day of his life, and said, God, what do you want me to do today? God must have something for me to do today. And he says, let's go attack some Philistines. And he didn't really have anyone with him, so he tells his armor bearer, do you want to go with me? And his armor bearer is like, I'm down. Let's go. Whatever you say, I'm good with. Let's go. We'll do it. So you have Jonathan in this attitude that he has, this confident faith that he has, that it doesn't matter what I'm facing, what I'm looking at, what's going on around me. I believe in God. God has given us something to do. And if he said that we need to do it, then we will accomplish it, no matter what's standing in our way. So then he goes on to make things, in my opinion, even harder for himself. And he says, let's go up to him. And they're on the other side of this pass. And if you could just imagine in your mind, just this narrow pass, a narrow piece of land with a cliff on either side. And then the Philistine outpost on the other side in the clearing. He says, let's go attack them right there and see what happens. Let's just go up that way and attack them. And all of these things, there's a formula of what's going on that just makes this whole thing, Andre, ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. Jonathan gets one man, and he says, let's go attack the Philistines. I think God wants to give them into our hands today. That's what I really believe. And he says, okay. And he says, let's go up to this pass, and let's go call them out, so to speak. And we'll get to that in a minute, how he calls them out. But he says, let's go call them out. And if they come down and attack us, they'll be attacking them on that narrow pass. So literally only one Philistine would be able to come through at a time. It would be a great situation. You know, if you've seen that movie 300, or if you heard the history behind it with the Greeks, when the Persians attacked, and they were able to hold off thousands of Persians for days and days because they had to go through this little bottleneck. And they were able to defend it because they only had to put 4 or 5 men in there at a time. It was the same principle. So he said, so if they come and attack us on this pass, we got them. It'll be good. He said, but if they don't, if they say come up here, then we'll go up there. Then that means God's still going to give them to us. And which makes no sense. Instead of fighting them on this pass where it would be one man at a time, he says, we'll just go up and take on all 20 of them at one time. So just go for it. And then here's the kicker of his plan that's foolproof. He says to his armor bearer, he says, let's go show ourselves to the Philistines. In the Bible, in the English Bible, many times they use euphemisms, what we call euphemisms. And that literally means to use a kinder, gentler word for what was really going on. For like when two people get married, they say they knew each other. And we'll just leave it at that. All right, take a minute. I know. But here it says, let's go show ourselves. And in the Hebrew, that literally means to expose yourself to someone in a way that disgraces them, the one you're exposing yourself to. Anybody here see Braveheart? You know, that very first battle with all these Scotsmen in their kilts, and they're ready to fight with the English. And William Wallace says, let's go pick a fight. And he gets them all together, and what do? They turn around. That's what they did. Jonathan and his armor bearer, literally, that's what it means in the Hebrew, got up and said, let's go moon them. And if they get mad, then that means we're going to win. That's like saying, I'm going to go kick this pit bull. And if he growls at me, then he's a good dog. It does not make any sense. You don't put yourself in that situation. It's a given. I'm going to go moon these guys. And if they don't fight me on the pass and they say, let's go up to them, then that means we're going to win. I'm just telling you what it says. I'm just telling you what it says. So Jonathan had some confident faith. Did Jonathan have some? Jonathan had confident faith. So he gets up and sure enough, he goes and they show themselves to the Philistines. And the Philistine says, y'all come on up here. And they go up there, and he cuts them down. Him and his armor bearer, the odds were 10-1. 2 Israelites against 20 Philistines, and they killed them all. And then God, I think because of Jonathan's faith, because of his bravery, because of his willingness to step out on his faith, he sends a panic into the Philistine camp. And then Saul shows up, and they just start cutting down the Philistines and winning because the Philistines didn't know what to do. Here comes this guy out of nowhere with just his armor bearer, and he takes on 20 of our men and kills them all. So they start a panic to where not only are they in a panic and the ground is shaking, but they're turning on one another because they don't know what to do. So one of the morals of this story is read your whole Bible. Because you'll come across all kinds of wonderful stories like this that you didn't know were in there. But the next thing we have to ask is, what can we learn? What can we learn from this? The first thing that we can learn is that you need to act on your faith. If you have faith, if you believe God, if you believe that he's told you to do something, if you believe he's called you to do something, if you believe he set a task in front of you, then you need to do it. Because Jonathan, even though I believe he was a fearless dude, I believe he liked to fight, I believe he was a warrior at heart. I believe that's why he and David got along so well. Because if you'll read in 2 chapters later, and when you read about David and Goliath, when David says, I'll take on this uncircumcised Philistine, and then it says he ran. He ran at a giant. He didn't wait. He ran at him. They had the same attitude, and that's why they just clicked. But when you know God has something for you, you need to do it. And Jonathan wasn't, like I said, he wasn't just having presumptuous faith. And let's just go and attack as many Philistines as we can and see what happens. He had been reading his Bible, what was available to him at the time. He read the first 5 books of the law where God said, I'm going to deliver you from the hands of the Egyptians, and I'm going to give you this land, and it's your land. And then he read what God said to Joshua when he said, everywhere you set your foot will be yours, and I want you to drive these pagan nations out from your land. This is your land. So to him, it wasn't, let's just get up and pick a fight. It wasn't, I'm a warrior, I need to go to war. It's, God said to do this. What are we waiting for? Why are we just sitting around under this tree, Dad? They're over there. Let's go get them. Here, I'll show you. Come on, armor bearer, let me show Dad how to do this. So he just got up and he acted on his faith. My wrestling coach used to tell me all the time, he said, Dave, I don't mind if you get beat trying to pin somebody. Don't get beat running away from somebody. Err on the side of aggression. If you mess up a move because you're trying to do a move on somebody instead of just defending yourself, that's okay with me. Because you'll learn more that way than you will by constantly being in a defensive mode. If you're going to fail forward. Think about Peter. Jesus comes walking up. He's walking on the water. They're in the middle of a storm. Jesus is walking on the water. And Peter's like, I think I can do that. Jesus didn't tell him to do that, but he said, I think I can do that. So he said, can I do that? And Jesus said, come on, get out of the boat. Come on. But he had to get out of the boat to begin with. He had to make a decision. He had to see that there was something in front of him that through the power of God and the presence of Jesus Christ, he was able to do. But he had to get out of the boat to make it happen. And he got out of the boat. So the first thing that we need to learn from this passage and from the way that Jonathan lived his life is that we have to act on our faith. We can't just wait around for God to do things for us. If God has told you to do something, if God has given you a path, you have to follow it. The second thing we can learn from this is surround yourself with faithful people. Now, I had to think about this point for a minute, Andre, because I didn't know if that armor bearer was the sharpest dude. I mean, if you just think about it. Because basically, whatever Jonathan said, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, let's go. I'll do it. Yeah. But the way I think is they both had the kind of faith that they needed to get there. He didn't have someone saying, I don't know, Jonathan, that's 20 Philistines. And in a couple of chapters ago, they stole the Ark of the Covenant and they beat us and the last time we went to war and we don't have any weapons, you've got weapons and I just carry yours around and, I just don't know if this is really what God has for you right now. Those friends that instead of encouraging you, they just say, well, maybe you should just pray about that a little bit more. I'm not really sure that's what God has for you right now. Instead of being encouraging, instead of encouraging you to step out, instead of encouraging you to take that leap of faith, they're just always doubting. Always doubting. And you don't need those kind of people. If Jonathan had that kind of person with him that day, we might not have ever read this chapter. It might not have taken place. But he had somebody with him and said, yeah, I'm with you, heart and soul. Let's go. Let's do it. Surround yourself with faithful people. And what that also means is people who don't have faith, people who aren't encouraging, people who don't build you up, people who don't lift up who God is in you. You have to find a way to cut yourself off from them. It may not always be easy. It may not be something that you enjoy doing, but you got to find a way to do it because they'll keep you down and they will poison your spirit. They will not encourage you. They will not encourage what God has for you. And instead of being where you're supposed to be, taking on 20 Philistines and being who you're supposed to be, you're just going to sit there next to them. And you never know, as you might turn into that person who discourages everyone else. And you don't want to be that. I mean, just look at Jonathan in contrast with the rest of the Bible. If you just turn back a little bit in Judges, an angel shows up to Gideon. And he says, "Blessings to you, mighty man of valor." And Gideon says, "Who are you looking at? Who are you talking to?" And Jonathan, I think he read that. He had those stories passed down to him, and he was one of those people that would get in the mirror every morning and say, "Mighty man of valor. Good morning, mighty man of valor." I mean, just look at the confidence that he had. And he achieved it. I'll tell you something of the story I heard one time. Dr. Freeman Rabowski, he went to 6th Avenue, graduated. He's the president of the University of Baltimore in Maryland. And I saw him interviewed on the Today Show and years ago. And he said that when he was in the 8th grade, he told his mother, "I'm going to get a PhD. I'm going to get a PhD one day." And he said every morning from the 8th grade on, I got up in the morning, I looked in the mirror and I said, "Good morning, Dr. Rabowski. Good morning, Dr. Rabowski." He believed it and he acted on it. And the first time I ever saw him, they were greeting Dr. Rabowski, the president of the university, on the Today Show. And he was talking about what he was doing to make lives better for other people. You have to believe it, and then you have to act on it. But you have to surround yourself with faithful people. And the last thing that we can learn from this, there's plenty of things, but my last point is keep your focus on God, not the circumstances. Keep your focus on God. If you look at the circumstances, like I said before, this doesn't make any sense. Jonathan is a fool. My daddy, if he'd have got up and told my dad what he was about to do, now it wasn't that my dad wasn't a man of faith. My dad would have said, "Boy, you're crazy. You don't do that. You don't take on 20 people when you're the only one that has any weapons. Your armor bearer is just carrying your stuff. You don't do that. And also, you don't have a developed army. The army that you do have, they're very low on weapons because the Philistines keep you from getting any weapons. The Philistines have oppressed you for 4 and 5 generations. Everything is against you. If you look at the big picture, none of this is going to work. Why are you doing this?" And Jonathan would say, "Because the word of God says, this is our land, and God told us to take it back, and God told us to drive the Philistines off of it. And we're not finished doing that yet, so we need to finish that. So if I get up and follow God's will and do as I'm supposed to do, and that's part of what I'm doing, then he's going to show up and he's going to do his part." That's what he believed. He focused on God and what God said instead of his circumstances. And sometimes our experiences will keep us from believing that. Our experiences, but sometimes we don't have enough experiences of faith, enough experiences of positive things happening. I wanted to share an experience, a story about my youngest and her experience with the tooth fairy. She learned about the tooth fairy last Friday at school. She had a tooth fall out, and by the time we got to pick her up, she lost it, and she was worried. And her teacher and we both had told her, "You can write the tooth fairy a note and tell her what happened, and she'll still leave you the money because she knows where the tooth is. She's got that." And but Sophia was still concerned. It was her first tooth she'd ever lost. She's 6 years old, so she still had worries, and she still asked us that night, "Is you sure the tooth fairy is going to be okay with the note?" And I said, "I promise you, she'll be okay with the note." And sure enough, the next morning, the tooth fairy brought her $1 and took the note. $1, yeah. Inflation. And then that next morning, listen to this, that was Friday night. Saturday morning, she gets up. She's holding the $1 in one hand and telling us, "I just lost another tooth." And she pulled out, it was loose though. It was loose. She pulled out her other tooth. And then she said, "Daddy, will the tooth fairy come again?" I said, "She absolutely will." But she was still concerned, and she kept asking about it, but that was okay. She was learning. It was a new experience for her. You and I have a relationship with Jesus Christ. We have faith. We don't have to be asking all the time, will God show up? Will he do what he said he will do? Will he meet my needs? Will he save me? Will he protect me? Will he provide for me? Will he guide me? You know he will. You have to. If you've had those experiences, you need to stop looking at your circumstances and keep reminding yourself of your experiences. I believe that's the type of person that Jonathan was. That he had seen his father win battles. That he had heard the stories, and they told him that we were slaves in Egypt, and God raised up Moses, and he told the Pharaoh, "You need to let my people go, or you will be sorry." And then there were the 10 plagues. And then God parted the Red Sea so that they walked through on dry land. He heard these stories. And like I said, he read the Word of God. Let me just read that to you. I think this was in him, that he remembered what God said to Joshua in Joshua chapter 1, verses 3 through 5. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river to the Euphrates, all the Hittite country to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. And Jonathan looked around and he said, that's not our boundaries. We don't have all that land that God said we're supposed to have. And we still have all these pagan nations that God told us to drive out. So you know what? This morning when I get up, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go show myself to some Philistines, and we're going to see what happens after that. But he believed God's word. He did not let his circumstances dictate his faith. And we can't let our circumstances dictate our faith. You know that Dr. Seuss was turned down 35 times by publishers before someone said they would publish his books? Do you know that Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times to make the light bulb before he finally got it right? We need to have that kind of faith that doesn't give up, that kind of faith that acts, that kind of faith that moves, that bold faith that we see in the Old Testament. We see it with Jonathan. We see it with the 3 Hebrew boys who said, even if God doesn't deliver us, we're not going to bow. We see it with Joshua, the foolishness of just marching around. Just march around a city and praise, and God's going to give you the city. And Joshua says, okay, let's do it. And David and Goliath, my favorite one, with the slingshot. And then when Saul said, you can't do this, he said, look, when the bear and the lion stole my sheep, I went and killed them and took it back. I know what I'm doing. I've been there. He had the experience of faith, and he acted on it. If God is for us, who could be against us? You know, and the thing about it with Jonathan, I honestly believe he was a man of faith, and he had his faith stories, and they were taught to him from somebody in his past that taught him, whether it was his father, whether it was his mother, his grandparents. They passed those faith stories on to him because he believed that when he stood up in the power of God, that God was going to do what God said that he would do. But see, the thing is, he didn't have Jesus. We have Jesus. He was going on, wherever you set your foot, I will give you. And we have greater things than I have done, you will do in my name. He was going on, God parted the Red Sea, and we have that Jesus died for our sins. He was going on the fact that God sent 10 plagues and shamed Pharaoh, and we have that greater is he who is in us than he that is in the world. We have Jesus Christ. We have a better faith. Jesus said that everybody from John the Baptist back longed to see the day of Jesus walking on the earth. They wanted to see him, and we have him. So when you don't know what to do, when you don't know what you should do next, you need to remember this passage and say, Lord, help me to be like Jonathan. Give me Jesus inside of me. Raise Jesus up inside of me so that when I'm facing a challenge, that I'll be able to stand and I'll be able to move forward and do what you've called me to do. I want to close with this story about this little league team that was out on the field, and one of the extra players was on the bench, and this older gentleman walked up and he He said, how's the game going? He said, oh, it's going fine. He said, well, what's the score? He said, well, we're down 18-0. And he said, well, you don't seem worried. He said, yeah, but we haven't been up to bat yet. Your time to be up to bat is coming. Have the faith that you need when the time comes. Have a confident faith. God bless you.
Bless you. Wow. For your pastor clown. I just love Dave's method of presentation. It's very folksy and very common sense. Yeah. And I wouldn't dare take any liberties with what he said, because the Lord knows he's well said it. But sometimes, Dave, if you will, sometimes people confuse what that kind of courage looks like. Sometimes they think it has to be water walking courage. Wow. And sometimes they think it has to be kill 20 Philistines courage. But sometimes it's just the courage to get up in the morning. After yesterday was the most horrible day you've had. After last week was so absolutely horrible. After you didn't expect to get anything better, but you had the courage this morning to get up and come here. That's the kind of courage that some folks would say, why are you going to church after the world been kicking you down? Why are you going to get up and spend your time going to church? Because something on the inside told you that you need to get on the outside. That's the kind of courage that you need to have. It's crazy courage. People look at you like you're foolish. They don't understand why in the midst of all the negativity that's going on in your life, you got the nerve to trust in a God that you can't even see. And yet, that's what makes the difference, y'all. That's the difference between believers and unbelievers. Yeah, I can't see him. I can't trace him, but I sure can trust him. And today I trust him. Now my question to you today is, do you have the kind of crazy, crazy faith that will let you give your life to a God like that? That's my question. Dave just told you about Jesus Christ. He just told you about him. Do you know this Jesus? Have you given yourself to him? Is he your Savior? He's my Savior. He's his Savior. If he's your Savior, raise your hand. Now, if you couldn't raise your hand, or if you hesitated raising your hand, then you got some faith to exhibit. You got some courage to show. But I can tell you, he'll validate your courage. He'll bless you for that courage. And so, right now, all the leaders of the church have just come to welcome you. And I'm asking you right now, today, don't let another day go by. Validate the fact that you had courage enough to get up this morning. Come on, step right out into this aisle. Step right out and come on down and let us know that you want to be part of Jesus Christ's family. You want to be part of the church, because we want you to be. The doors of our church, we say, are open. But more importantly, we want to open our hearts to you and make sure that you can feel the love that Jesus gives us. The choir is going to stand and sing a song right now. If you've never been baptized, if you've been outside of the faith house for a little while and you decided that you want to come back into the faith house, we're waiting for you. Nobody's going to ask any questions. We just want you to come. And while the choir sings this song, while Amara sings this song, the doors of our church are open. Whosoever will, let them come right now.
Well, right there now. It is. I hope you were blessed by the God's word. It's my prayer that you will grow from this message. But in case you need a refresher, you can always stop by our physical location and worship with us at 7600 Division Avenue over in the East Lake community. I believe one visit and you'll find out that we truly are the friendliest church from the parking lot to the pulpit. Looking forward to meeting you. God bless you. Take care.